Oof. Shit.
Hey, Bunny, how are you? It's been a long
Hey,
time.
long time, Dimitri.
So where are you right now? I know you've been traveling for the last couple of years. I know you had a lot of changes in your life. Where are you right now? What's your, I guess, life stage is, work, family, other things?
So physically, I'm located in Serbia. When COVID started, I came out here for 2 weeks at the end of August in 2020.
Hmm.
I was living in Chicago at the time, but actually, I just moved to Chicago from New Zealand. So Chicago was kind of a new thing for me, but being that COVID just started, um, not a whole lot was going on. So I came to Serbia for 2 weeks, and then I'm hanging out with the girl that I knew from before. Decided to come back a month later for another month just to kind of see where things are going with her. And she's now my wife, and we have a child, and I'm still in Serbia.
Congrats, man.
Thanks.
Um,
So yeah,
yeah, that sounded like a very interesting turn in your life, right? So, and it induced by something that we didn't expect, right? I
right.
remember, so we used to work with you together, and COVID happened, and well, I guess economy was going looking not so great anymore, and the client that we both worked at started to do haircuts. So I remember you went to Serbia, right, for some time. Decided to actually give yourself time break and reunite with your family, and then was New Zealand, which was pretty awesome in my view. It's like you like, screw this, I'm just gonna take this opportunity, and I'm looking forward for you to speak about it. But tell me about. Let's start with Chicago. How you end up there? Because I only recall that you picked up new client, and that was, I believe, in Utah.
Salt Lake
Some,
City. Yeah.
yeah, so bank. I remember you enjoyed the scenery and skiing,
Mhm.
and I stayed back at the TNT for another maybe half a year to a year, because I remember they were keep doing haircuts, including full timers and consultants, and somehow they keep them keeping me. But I remember the time you was in Salt Lake City. Could you talk about your experience there and where they enjoyed that client? And by the way, I don't think we talked about it. We both were consultants. I was more on the technical side. You was more on agile side of things, right?
Yep. Yep. So after I got sacked in 2019 February, as you said, I came to Serbia only for a week at the time because I haven't visited in a while. And I remember it was a Thursday that we got fired, or that I got fired. Well, it was like 15, 20 people
I
that got
think
fired.
fired is too harsh word to describe what happened.
You said you put explicit, so it's fine. We can say whatever.
No,
That
no, I
will
mean,
got
people get fired
sacked.
when they do something wrong, but
Well, okay, true.
you didn't
Let
do anything
go.
wrong.
True. This is true. Uh, so it was a Thursday, and then they told us on Friday we don't have to show up to work. We'll still get paid. And then as of Monday, we're jobless. So on that Thursday, I bought a ticket to come to Serbia for a week. So because I was like, I'll start looking for a job right away, but it's not like I'm going to have an in-person interview that
Right.
following week. I knew that. And all the phone interviews I can do, doesn't matter where I'm at. So I remember I just left for like a week, and I actually ended up having some phone interviews. And then probably a week or two after I came back to the US, I got a call from people in Salt Lake City. It was actually still the same consulting group that we both
Right.
worked
I
through.
recall that. Yep.
Yes. And they called me for a job in Salt Lake City. And it was the middle of the winter. And I was like, oh, okay. Salt Lake City. Like I also um I didn't mind leaving LA at the time because I was going through a divorce, and I was like, change of scenery would be good. So I remember I went to Salt Lake City for the weekend just to ski. And I was like, I can do this. So they offered me like I don't know, like a 6 month contract. And during that time, I started talking to guys from New Zealand. That was the story from way before, actually. But
Yeah. Talk about that. Where did it start?
Oh, that started in one of the agile coaching classes that I took up in Washington. I can't remember when it was. At some point in 2018. Um, I don't know, September maybe 2018. And I met a guy who said he's moving to New Zealand.
Mhm.
And being that I've been to New Zealand before, I studied there, and I thought I still think it's the greatest country in the world. So I was like, all right, tell me about it. So him and I exchanged numbers and kept in touch. He had moved to New Zealand quickly after that course. And then he pinged me at one point and he's like, we're hiring. So I started talking to them. And when I got an offer, I was in Salt Lake City. And I remember I was debating for a little bit because I wanted to go. But it's not as easy as going from LA to Salt Lake City. So I had to
Kind of have
kind
to
of
commit a little bit more, right?
commit a little more. Plus, I was going to make, I think, 3 times less
Yeah.
than what I was making in the US, with expenses being a little higher than they are in the US. So I was like, do I really want to do this or not? I was like, yeah, I want to do this. So I didn't stay as long as I thought I would, but I didn't regret it. It's the best decision. Like, New Zealand helped me clear my mind completely, helped me get over everything that I was going through, helped me start new hobbies, new ideas, new way of life, basically. And once I achieved that, my parents were actually visiting me in New Zealand. I was like, I'll just take that flight with you guys back. And them and my sister, they're living in Chicago. So I was like, I'll go with you guys. I'll settle where my family is, and I'll find a job, I guess, or whatever goes with it. And that was February of 2020 when I went from New Zealand to Chicago. I got a job like within 2 weeks, 3 weeks, I think. And then COVID hit in March. And basically, because everybody was remote, and I'll tell you how I ended up in Michigan also, but that we'll talk about that later. But being that all the work was remote and everything, I was able to come to Serbia, and I'm still working for the same company remotely from Serbia. Almost 3 years later?
Help me to recall kind of a sequence of events. So
Okay.
you took a chance with New Zealand. You went there. You helped to clear your mind. I remember pictures where you actually taking COVID lockdowns in there, right? I think you had a dog at the time, and you were just sitting with like this fluffy loafers, home loafers, right? The shoes that you work at home inside, and you was like, "Hey, lockdown in New Zealand" or something like that.
That was, I know exactly which photo you're talking about, because I think I posted it on Instagram or something. That was Chicago, because I got the dog in Chicago. Actually, the dog is here. You want to see the dog?
Sure, yeah.
Boogie. Hop. Boogie. Hop. She was asleep, but you'll recognize that's the dog. Boogie. Hop, 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 hop. Hop, hop, hop.
Here we go.
All right,
Huge, man.
That's the dog that you remember.
Yeah.
I got her as soon as I got to Chicago from New Zealand, and that's when COVID started. I was in Chicago when COVID started.
So that was end of your New Zealand stint, or was somewhere in the middle?
No. That was the end of my New Zealand stint. New Zealand stint ended in February of 2020. I bought this dog, funny enough, February 29, 2020. I remember that because now we get to celebrate every 4 years. And then COVID started middle of March. So something like that. Yeah. There was an Airbnb that I rented for like 2-3 weeks until I find an apartment. And then I was like, COVID hit, right? Like lockdown and everything. And I'm like, why would I get an apartment right now? Like, I can't even get out. I'll get another Airbnb somewhere else. And people weren't traveling, so everything was dirt cheap. So I found a place on the lake in Michigan paid way less than I would for any apartment. And I had like the entire lake house to myself and the dog with me. And I had the lake view from my bedroom. And I worked from there for like, I think a month and a half. That was kind of awesome too.
Wow, why Chicago? Sorry, why Michigan? It's a not very popular spot.
Oh, I didn't care where it was. I just looked somewhere within driving distance of Chicago that I get like a cool house with a cool view. Like it doesn't matter. At that point, it's COVID, right? So nobody's going anywhere. All the restaurants are closed, bars are closed. You can't go anywhere. So like you're going to be at home, you're going to watch Netflix, you're going to work, you're going to work out, you're going to do whatever stuff you can do at home. So I was like, I want to rent an Airbnb that's actually fun to be in. Mm-hmm. I know I'm only going to be going to grocery store and maybe some hikes. And I found a place in Michigan where it had all that. My sister and my brother-in-law were moving to the US with a child who was 2.5 years old at the time. Basically they wanted to pick a place that will give them most opportunities very quickly, right? Because it's not like they came with millions of dollars. They just came as, normal people. Yep. And being that Chicago's got like a huge Serbian community, it's always super easy for people to get hooked up with jobs that will allow you to pay your bills until you, get your footing, until you get rolling and figure out what you want to do with your life. And then at this point, I think they can go wherever they want, but they like it there. And my parents are there. And when we go there next year, it's not my favorite city. It's not my favorite place, but I think that's where my wife and my son and I and our dog will end up as well.
So to wrap up as far as Chicago, what do you like, what you dislike about this city?
What I like is the city of Chicago. Downtown Chicago is amazing. Mm-hmm. When it's not fucking 50 below zero, obviously. I love that. Cost of living isn't bad, I guess. Mm-hmm. Amazing skydiving centers around. So that's awesome. That became my hobby when I was in New Zealand. So now wherever I go, it's like, is there near
have to be there?
where can I find a plane I can jump out of? And I like the fact that my family's there. Mm-hmm. What I dislike is, even though it's cheap compared to, let's say, California or New York, mm-hmm. It's still not super cheap. But I know of places, I've lived in places like, for example, when I first moved to the US in high school, and then subsequently for college and so on and so forth, for I want to say 8 or 9 years, I lived in St. Louis, Missouri, mm-hmm. which is like probably a 4-hour drive from Chicago. I'd rather go to St. Louis than Chicago, really? Because at this point, at this stage, it's family lifestyle for me, right? It's going to be a suburb lifestyle for me. And I don't mind. I'm actually looking forward to it. But that suburb lifestyle, that family lifestyle, I would prefer it in St. Louis than in Chicago. Because downtown Chicago is amazing. Obviously, gazillion times better than downtown St. Louis. But how often am I going to get to go there with this lifestyle? So how does it benefit me, the fact that it's there? Yet I still have to deal with the winter and higher cost of living. Granted, I'll have more job opportunities, but there's that kind of, I guess, the weight that tips the scales, the fact that my family's there, and that's most likely going to end up tipping the scale to favor Chicago or Chicago suburbs, I guess.
Yep. How about New Zealand? So you mentioned that it helped you to reset. What did you like, dislike, and how you overall compare to lifestyle in the United States and Europe, for example? Because I personally never been to New Zealand. I can even probably hard time to find it on a map until recently. But I've heard that is very developed, very kind of well developed and doing well financially country. And I also heard that it's a kind of playground for for wealthy kids, right? So there is wealth there, or people go either retire there or just have a chill lifestyle, like Cayman Islands type of thing.
I don't know, like, as far as it being playground for the rich kids. Maybe some rich kids of Instagram want to take a cool photo and they'll fly their private jet to New Zealand, probably.
Mm-hmm.
But as far as people who live there, it's actually probably a couple levels below the standards in the US.
Mm-hmm.
So that part is not, I mean, it's not a third world country. Don't get me wrong. It is a well-developed Western world country. People are amazing. They don't give a shit about a lot of unnecessary things. They know how to live in a moment. They like and respect their nature. New Zealand is the first country that gave rights to rivers gave rivers the same rights that humans have. Like, for example, if I were to take this bottle and chuck it into a river, I'd be prosecuted the same as if I were to throw it in your head. So they're very conscious about their surroundings, about their environment. They're pretty secluded. They're in God knows where. I mean, as you said, it's not even easy to find on the map. So they're kind of on their own, and they know how to appreciate it and respect that. The place is gorgeous, beautiful. Doesn't matter where you go. Mm-hmm. Like, I drove places when I lived there, and it happened to me. I don't even know how many times that I would just stop the car on the shoulder, and I would walk out and I would look at the just the view, and I'm like, is this even real? It's what is this?
Yep.
And I've traveled a lot, but I haven't seen anything that's even close to it as a whole.
Really?
Right. No. Yep. Correct. And if I had my family there, I would have never left New Zealand. Mm-hmm. The only reason I left was because I didn't feel like that at the age of what I was probably like 39 at the time. I didn't want to start from scratch. If I had a time machine to take me back to when I left Serbia to go to the US when I was 17, and had an opportunity to go to New Zealand instead, I'd take that. No questions asked. But I don't have the time machine, and my family's not in New Zealand, so I ended up leaving. And I'm not regretting that either. It was a good decision, and I'll still go there, visit whenever I can. But at this point, I'm better off living in the US.
So to summarize, New Zealand, it's great nature, great views, people are nice. As far as standard of living is slightly below, or a couple of levels below United States. How's the infrastructure, for example, roads?
Good. Very good.
Very good, right?
Very good. The only thing that when I say standard of living, I mean cost of living, how much money you make compared to how much your life, or how much it costs for you to live there. That's a couple levels below the US. Everything else is more or less on par when it comes to infrastructure. When it comes to like everything you have in the US, you have it in New Zealand, with one exception. For some reason, their homes, their houses are very shitty quality. Mm-hmm. Like, it's basically whatever the temperature is outside, that's inside. You basically have a shelter to shield you from rain. That's it. Like, maybe the new homes that they build, maybe they're a bit different. I don't know. What I was renting was pretty old, but a lot of people have told me, they're like, don't expect the same quality built that you see in Europe or in the US. So if I had to pick one downside of New Zealand, I would say that that's it. Mm-hmm.
How about financial services, banking? How's that?
Same,
right?
Good. Yeah.
ATMs,
no
credit cards, right?
Everything's, I can't remember if they do things a bit differently. Whatever I did with the banking there was just fine. I didn't have any issues. So, yeah.
I recently came from Japan, and what really struck me there, I didn't expect them to have such a heavy cash focused society. Meaning,
Really?
yeah, right off the bat, when I landed in airport and I want to take a train to get to major city, you go to machine, a kiosk that's supposed to dispense you a ticket for a train. You cannot use your credit card, United States
Cash
credit
only.
card. Yeah, well, either cash or they have their own version of like a debit cards. So basically, they also have variations of them. You can even use the Metro card for transportation, put money on it, and use it to pay for things. So you, either you have that or cash. And outside of that, if you're not in a major city, or you might be in a major city, but you go to kind of mom and pop type of shop or small restaurant, do not expect that you can pay with card. They might refuse.
Interesting.
Yep, cash only.
Yeah, definitely not. New Zealand, I remember for 6 months that I was there, I only saw New Zealand money when my parents came to visit, and my dad had to get some money out of the ATM because, you know, old people, they just need cash. And I was like, let me see what that looks like. He's like, what do you mean? You've been living there, living here for a bit. I was like, I haven't seen it. I don't know.
In States, I barely use cash ever,
Yeah.
unless I sell something on Craigslist and people give me cash for like a couch or whatever, TV. That's how I get cash. Otherwise, why the hell I would need cash? Everything is card, and it's just a burden in your pocket to carry cash and change.
I'm with you.
What did you do for sports?
So I started mountain biking and skydiving when I was there. Especially the scene for the extreme sports in New Zealand is amazing.
Really?
There's also like they're as a nation, they're into rugby a lot. So that was fun. I saw a rugby game back in 2006 when I was there in college, and that was an experience on its own. When I was there now, a couple of years ago, I only went to a bar to watch the All Blacks, which is a New Zealand national team, to watch them play Australia, which is like the biggest sporting thing that can happen there. And that was something. They're crazy about it, and they have good ways about it. Like they treat it as a sporting event. They don't treat it as, I don't know how much, well, you might actually, like the soccer scene in Europe, it's quite often used to send political messages or to, I don't know, a lot of hooligans, a lot of stupid shit is going on around soccer in Europe. That's not the case, at least not that I've seen with rugby in New Zealand. So that part was fun. And then there was a lot of fun activities that we did, whether with my colleagues from work or whether with a group of friends outside of work. So I actually did quite a lot when I was there.
So was it your first time mountain biking, or you done it before? You just kind of done it again?
It was my first time actually going a mountain bike trail, like the real one. And I bought like a really good mountain bike. I didn't buy like a cheap shit that's gonna give way under what, 220 pounds of muscle. No,
it is muscle.
Well, amongst other things, yes. But that's the first time I experienced mountain biking trails, and I liked it. It was fun.
Did you fall at all?
No, not once. Not once. Oh yeah, and I went skiing on the volcano in New Zealand. That was fun too. Because it was, when I got there, it was August, and that's their winter. And I brought my skis with me from Salt Lake City. I was like, what am I going to do with them? I went skiing. I had, I think, like a week or 2 weeks free before I started working. So I just went and skied on the volcano. That was fun.
That's the thing I like about you, and something I'm learning from you is how to adapt to what life throws at you and have fun with it, right? Like, for example, just in this conversation, instead of being sad that you got let go, you took a trip to see your folks in Serbia. Instead of like preparing and I don't know, adapting to a new environment in Salt Lake and New Zealand, you actually went skiing. So things like that. I think people should really look at life more like you rather than not.
Well, ultimately, you're the one who's making that decision. It is a decision. Like, it's easy to be sad after you get sacked from work, but it's also an option for you to say, hey, okay, what can I do now that I wasn't able to do otherwise? Like, that was the case with me when we got sacked at AT&T. So what can I do now that I wouldn't be able to do had I not been sacked? And I was like, well, I got nothing going on next week. And my parents and my friends are all in Serbia just doing nothing also. So let's book a plane ticket.
So talk about Serbia, since we touched it a couple of times. What's the life like in Serbia? I mean, for me, I'm coming from Ukraine and old Soviet Union countries, right? Is Serbia kind of similar mindset as other Soviet countries? Or I don't even recall whether Serbia ever been part of Soviet Union, honestly.
No, it wasn't. It was never part of the Soviet Union or Soviet bloc. It was independent. It was part of Yugoslavia. But there's definitely similarities. There are definitely similar way of thinking and looking at things. At the same time, there got to be some differences as well. In order for me to tell you exactly what, I would have to spend some substantial time into a former Soviet, somewhere in former Soviet Russia, which I've never been to, or for you to come here and spend some time. Just by meeting people, I know, yes, there's a lot of difference. There's a lot of similarities, but just like that, there's got to be some differences as well.
Yeah, I think even the fact that we became friends pretty fast and pretty easy, like we didn't have to create official way to interact with one another, like sometimes you have to do with American folks. Or I mean, actually, I don't really recall if other nations I have to go extra mile to start speaking what I'm thinking. What with you was like instant, like I felt like, oh, we made from the same kind of DNA,
Probably, yeah.
So how is life right now in Serbia economically? Is country growing or shrinking? How people are happy or sad? And I recall events of war type of nature in was it late 90s in Yugoslavia, right? So when country basically broke down, and even recently we had events like maybe half a year ago. It was something between Serbia and Croatia, I believe, or it was have to do with people had passports and they had to country would not renew them or something like that. But
that I don't know. That
actually, I remember I even texted you around the time, and you're like, I don't know, I don't pay attention.
Yeah, and I don't. That was going to be part of my answer. Yeah, what you're talking about, the 90s, early 90s, that's when Yugoslavia broke apart. 6 months ago. I don't know what happened today. I literally I don't watch the news because they're all corrupt motherfuckers that are just pulling shit their own way. And if ever I try to, because there's still, that war happened in Yugoslavia, 30 years ago? So let's call them main actors were Bosnia, Croatia, and Serbia. But you have two types of people that are still trying to fight that war today. In all three countries, you have two types of people. And you have people that are like, all right, that shit's behind us. Let's continue living. Let's make sure that our children can live normal lives. I'm the latter. So when someone starts arguing or taking a piss or just trying to talk shit about something that happened 30 years ago, they have absolutely no way of proving one way or another other than what you've heard either from someone or on the news, which is not news, it's an opinion, honestly, in all three countries. As far as that goes, I don't know what the current political situation is. I'm lucky enough to have my job from the US, so I don't even work for a company here. I'm at home. Even though I am physically present here, I can tell you a lot about how good the food is. I can tell you a lot about how people are a bit different than they used to be. I can tell you a lot about how country looks to be expanding. I can tell you a lot about how everywhere you turn, you see some traces of corruption. But that's all stuff that I see on a day-to-day basis just by being alive and going around people and hanging out with people. As far as politics go, yeah, I don't know shit.